we're going to talk about the MAVINEX USB-C hub or dongle, however you want to refer to it. Now, what we're going to talk about is the features or the inputs, and then I'll also talk about the testing that I did and then the results of that. Now, I did reach out to the company with my testing and some of the issues that I had. They had some nice responses back to me. Just for reference, so you know what kind of devices I have a MacBook Pro, I have a Windows laptop, I have an iPad Pro, and I have a Surface. So I've tested out on all these just to kind of give you an idea of what it's like. I did stress test this so you can kind of get an idea of the limits that it can go to. So you might not use it the way I did, but I wanted to make sure how far I could take it. Now, TLDR, if you don't want to watch the rest of this and you just want to get an idea of what I think of it, I think it's average. It's kind of in the middle. It's not the best. It's not the worst I've ever used, but it's in there. For my use case, I would use it only for kind of like travel and here and there. If you want something that's more stationary that you're going to use every day and have a lot of inputs hooked up to it, I probably would go with something else. But if you just need it for like when you're going out and about, or it's not going to be plugged in, or you don't use that many inputs, it's the perfect thing for you to use. So let's get to the inputs and the testing. So the unit has a standard length cord, USB-C. The inputs are HDMI, SD, micro SD, and then a charging USB-C. We'll get to that later. And then a data USB-C and 3 USB 3 ports and an Ethernet. That's about it for the unit, but the thing that I like, I'll show you. I have a lot of dongles, and I mostly use these. I have the 3 USB 3, and then a USB-C, Ethernet, and HDMI. But if I want micro, I need to go over to this side. So that's why I'm always going back and forth depending on what I need, and these other ones have various functions. So I like this one because it has everything I need all packed into one. Now you can find more that are more expensive that have probably everything you want. Those are, again, more expensive, and a lot of those are more stationary, so they're not portable, and that's what I like about having a dongle. I can take it wherever I want, and it's not tied to a desk. So let's get to the testing that I did. Now the first thing that came up and a lot of people commented about was the heat. They said it was very hot, it was like scalding, or they thought it might ruin their desk, stuff like that. I don't know if they got a bad unit, but I did not have that issue. It did get hot. I measured it with an infrared gun, and it was about 107 degrees, so it's not scientific, but good for these purposes. And then, so that is hot, but I could put it to my cheek, I was fine. It was kind of like a heating pad set to high. So it wasn't bad, it was just warm, hot. And that was the only time that it was that hot was when it was being used as a charging dock. So what I mean by that is you could take something like a laptop and the charging cord and plug it into this, and it would charge the laptop. So say if you only have one USB-C port and you don't want to lose the charging capabilities, you could use this unit to charge it. And that's the only time that it really got hot. When you weren't using it as a charging dock and just use it for inputs like USB-C and stuff like that, then it stayed within normal temperatures, and that was around 90 degrees. And just for reference, I actually measured my SSD drive while it was in use, and that was in the low 90s as well. So it operates pretty standard as far as temperature when you're not using it as a charging dock. And then I reached out to the company, and they did tell me that this was normal, but it shouldn't affect functionality, and I agree with that. Next, someone said that there was an issue with the HDMI port not having sound. I had no issues, so I don't know if they had a bad unit, but sound, video worked just fine. Now, one thing someone said was their MacBook Pro would not charge when using this as a charging dock. And from my experience, that is correct. I have the 2020 MacBook Pro, the one with the touch bar. Yeah, I know. And it would power the unit, but it wouldn't charge it. So for example, if my MacBook was only at 1%, it would keep the MacBook on and powered, but the battery would not charge. But when I switched to my Windows laptop, everything worked fine. It charged and powered the unit just fine. So depending on how many watts your device pulls, you may have an issue. You may not be able to do both. You may only be able to charge or power a device. Now, another thing that I noticed was when I was using the USB-C port for my external SSD drive, and then I had a wireless mouse plugged in right next to it, there was a considerable amount of lag when I was using the mouse. It wasn't keeping up with me. But then when I moved it to a port next to it or further away, I didn't have that problem. I reached out to the company, and they said it does cause some interference. So hopefully in the next model, they will alleviate that. Not a big deal, but just know going into it. Anything else that I put there, I had no problems with. It was just the mouse. Now with the Ethernet port, I did notice there was a little bit of lag. So I have a laptop that has a Ethernet port already. So when I plugged it into the port, web pages open in like 1 to 2 seconds. But then when I plugged it into the dongle, it took about like 6 to 7, a couple seconds. So there is a slight delay. I reached out to the company and they did say that it will not be as fast. Now, if you don't have an Ethernet port on your laptop, you'll probably never notice the difference. But because I did, there was a slight delay when using the dongle.